Someone's about to completely screw you over, and they're sitting there with this smug look like they're doing you a favor. Yeah, well, welcome to my Tuesday morning in Houston. I'm Noah Richardson, 49 years old, and I've been running maritime logistics for the past 18 years. The kind of guy who can tell you exactly how many containers are sitting in Port Houston right now and which ones are running behind schedule. My brother-in-law Owen just called me into the conference room at Richardson Maritime Services, and I already knew this wasn't going to be good news. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and that fake leather smell from chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Owen was sitting at the head of the table in his expensive suit, looking like he'd been practicing this conversation in the mirror. The guy had that corporate theater thing down to a science: make you wait, shuffle through papers that probably said nothing more important than his lunch order, then deliver whatever bomb he'd been planning. "Noah," he said, not even looking up from his paperwork. "Classic power move. Let's talk about the future of operations. Here we go." I leaned back in my chair, checking the shipping manifest on my phone. 3 container ships were due in this afternoon, and I had crews waiting for deployment schedules, but Owen's idea of timing never seemed to consider actual work. "Sure thing, Owen. What's on your mind?" He finally looked up with that expression rich guys perfect when they're about to ruin someone's day. "We're restructuring operations, cutting your department budget by 65%. Just like that. No build-up, no explanation, no discussion. 18 years of running the most profitable division in the company, and he announces it like he's ordering a sandwich. I kept scrolling through container tracking data on my phone. Inside, though, I was thinking about the phone call I'd gotten 8 weeks ago from Harper Davis at Continental Logistics. Funny how timing works sometimes. "I understand," I replied, my voice steady as a GPS reading. "When does this take effect?" Owen's smile spread across his face like oil on water. He thought he'd just put me in my place, probably already planning how he'd tell his MBA buddies about restructuring operations for digital transformation. Immediately, he continued, clearly enjoying every word. "We're investing in automated systems. The future is technology, not manual oversight. Automated systems." The guy had been pushing this AI logistics fantasy for 2 years, convinced that software could replace 18 years of port relationship management and supply chain expertise. Meanwhile, our biggest problems were still basic communication protocols and customs documentation delays that no algorithm was going to fix. I nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Perfect timing," I said. Those 2 words hung in the air between us like smoke from a diesel engine. Owen's smile faltered for just a second, not long enough for most people to notice, but I'd been watching his expressions for 15 years. He didn't know what I meant, and that little flicker of uncertainty was delicious. See, Owen Richardson might have had an MBA in his family's last name, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. For months, I'd been watching the cracks in his operation. Clients getting frustrated with delayed shipments because Owen kept promising technology solutions that didn't exist yet. Key employees grumbling about his consultant-driven management style that prioritized PowerPoint presentations over actual cargo movement. Suppliers getting nervous about payment delays while he funded his digital transformation fantasies with operational cash flow. And me, I'd been taking notes. Detailed notes. "Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?" I asked, standing up from my chair with the kind of calm that probably made him wonder if I'd hit my head on the way to his office. Owen waved a dismissive hand. "That covers it, Noah. I'm sure you understand the position the company is in. The position the company was in, right? The company that had just posted record quarterly profits was apparently so strapped for cash that they needed to gut their most profitable department. Makes perfect sense when you don't think about it at all." I walked toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "Owen," I said, turning back to face him, "I want you to know that I really do appreciate everything you've done for me." His chest puffed up like a ship's horn. The guy lived for moments like this, when the help showed proper gratitude. Well, Noah, family takes care of family, family. The word tasted like bunker fuel and broken promises. I was family when he needed someone to handle a crisis shipment at 2 a.m. on Sunday. I was family when quarterly numbers needed explaining to nervous investors who actually understood shipping logistics. But when it came time for respect or basic professional courtesy, suddenly I was just the guy who married his sister. "Absolutely," I agreed. "You've really opened my eyes to a lot of things." Owen nodded, completely missing the double meaning. For a smart businessman, the guy had a remarkable blind spot when it came to reading people. Maybe it came from 15 years of surrounding himself with consultants and family members who depended on his approval for their paychecks. The thing about being the operations guy in a family business is that you learn to see things differently. While Owen was busy playing CEO and impressing investors with Industry 4.0 buzzwords, I was actually running the day-to-day shipping operations, building relationships with port authorities, solving client problems, keeping the containers moving on schedule. Owen took credit for my successes and blamed me for every setback. The Port Authority contract that saved our operations during the 2020 shipping crisis. According to the company newsletter, that was all thanks to CEO Owen Richardson's innovative supply chain management. My name appeared in the fine print, if at all. But every failure, every delayed shipment, every client who got frustrated with our response times, that was all Noah Richardson, folks. Front page news, complete with a detailed analysis of my learning opportunities and areas for operational improvement. As I walked out of his office, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd been avoiding for weeks. Harper Davis, CEO of Continental Logistics, Houston's biggest competitor and Owen's biggest headache. She'd been trying to recruit me for months, making offers that would have made Owen's head spin if he'd bothered to pay attention to industry salary trends. Up until today, I'd been playing the loyal employee, the grateful brother-in-law, the team player. But you know what they say about the best-laid plans of megalomaniacal MBAs. Sometimes they blow up in your face in the most spectacular way possible. I typed out a quick message, "Harper, let's talk. That offer's still on the table." Her response came back in less than 30 seconds, always. "When can you start?" I looked back at Owen's office door, imagining him in there, probably already drafting emails about operational efficiency and cost optimization, secure in the knowledge that he'd put me in my place. Poor guy had no idea that he'd just lit the fuse on his own company. How about we discuss details over lunch? I typed back, "I've got some interesting insights about market opportunities you might find useful." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I like where this is going. Noon at the Marriott downtown." "Perfect," I replied. "See you there." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and headed toward my office. My soon-to-be former office, that is, with a spring in my step that hadn't been there in months. Owen wanted to cut my budget by 65%. Fine. I was about to cut him out of the picture entirely. Let me paint you a picture of my so-called perfect life before you start feeling too sorry for poor old Noah, getting his operations gutted. I had the corner office with windows overlooking the Houston Ship Channel company truck that still had that new leather smell, and a salary that made my Navy buddies jealous every time we grabbed beers. Oh, and I was married to Grace Richardson, Owen's older sister. Smart, beautiful, and born into a shipping family that had been moving cargo through Texas ports for 30 years. Grace worked in marketing for a tech firm downtown, but she'd grown up around container yards and knew the difference between a TEU and a FEU better than most logistics coordinators. To everyone on the outside looking in, I was living the American dream. Maritime operations director, stable family business, house in the suburbs with a 2-car garage and a riding mower I actually used on weekends. Here's the thing about golden cages, though. They're still cages, and after 15 years of being Owen's dancing monkey, the gilding had worn pretty thin. Every success I'd managed to pull off got twisted into some example of Owen's strategic vision and leadership excellence. Remember the Port Authority contract that saved our operations during the 2020 shipping crisis? The one where I spent 4 months coordinating with harbor masters and basically lived in container yards hammering out logistics protocols? Yeah, according to the company newsletter, that was all thanks to CEO Owen Richardson's innovative supply chain management. My name appeared in the fine print, if at all, usually somewhere between special thanks to the maintenance crew and don't forget to validate your parking. But every failure, every delayed shipment, every client who got frustrated with our response times, every time a crane broke down, or customs held up a container for inspection, that was all Noah Richardson, folks. Front page news, complete with a detailed analysis of my learning opportunities and areas for operational improvement. Owen had turned blame shifting into an art form, and I was his favorite canvas. The worst part wasn't even Owen himself, although the guy could give lessons on how to be a condescending know-it-all to experienced professionals everywhere. No, the real knife in the back came from watching him make decisions based on consultant reports instead of actual shipping experience. Take the automated tracking system he'd been pushing for 2 years. Owen kept talking about AI and predictive analytics like they were magic solutions that would solve every logistics problem. Meanwhile, I was trying to explain that our biggest issues were with port communication protocols and customs documentation, not data visualization. But what did I know? I'd only been coordinating maritime logistics since before Owen graduated business school. The family dinners were psychological warfare disguised as pot roast and small talk. Every Sunday at the Richardson house, Owen would hold court at the dining table, dispensing wisdom about industry transformation and digital disruption like some kind of shipping prophet. Noah, he'd say, cutting into his steak with surgical precision, you've got to start thinking bigger picture. The industry is evolving beyond traditional operations management. Traditional operations management. That's what he called 18 years of actually making sure cargo moved from point A to point B without getting lost, damaged, or held up in regulatory red tape. Grace would sit there sipping her wine, nodding along like one of those dashboard bobbleheads. Owen's right, honey. The company needs to stay competitive. Competitive. Another favorite family buzzword. We needed to be competitive by spending millions on software that might work someday, instead of investing in the port relationships and operational expertise that were actually keeping us profitable. But the real kicker was how they talked about the business itself. According to the official Richardson family mythology, this was a maritime dynasty built on hard work, family values, and innovative thinking. The reality? Owen's father had built a decent-sized shipping operation through steady client relationships and reliable service. Owen had inherited it 8 years ago and spent most of that time trying to turn it into something flashier. Behind the scenes, Richardson Maritime was held together with duct tape, crossed fingers, and my personal willingness to work miracles on a regular basis. While Owen played golf with potential investors and practiced his executive persona at industry conferences, I was the one actually keeping the cargo moving on schedule. The funny thing about being treated like hired help in your own family business is that it gives you a unique perspective on all the operational weaknesses. While Owen was busy impressing people with digital transformation presentations, I was watching the real problems pile up like containers in a traffic jam. Clients getting nervous about delivery reliability because Owen's automated systems couldn't handle the human element of port operations. Key employees updating their LinkedIn profiles because they were tired of being managed by consultants who'd never set foot in a container yard. Suppliers getting pissy about payment delays while Owen diverted cash flow to fund his technology experiments. Owen's empire looked solid from the outside: shiny offices, modern equipment, quarterly reports that made investors happy, but I could see the structural problems underneath. Outdated communication systems that hadn't been upgraded since the Clinton administration. A management structure that prioritized family loyalty over shipping expertise. Client relationships held together by my personal reputation, and about 15 years worth of favors I'd called in to clean up other people's mistakes. And through it all, I played my part. Loyal brother-in-law, dedicated operations manager, team player who never questioned the strategic vision or asked for more authority than I deserved. But here's what Owen never understood about Noah Richardson. I wasn't just some lucky guy who'd married into the shipping business. I was a Navy logistics veteran who'd built his own reputation in this industry, one satisfied client and one successful operation at a time. The relationships I'd developed, the trust I'd earned, the expertise I'd gained, none of that belonged to Owen Richardson or his precious family business. That was all mine. The meeting with Harper Davis went exactly like I'd hoped it would. She laid out Continental Logistics expansion plans with the kind of detail that suggested they'd been working on this for months. We weren't just talking about competing with Richardson Maritime. We were talking about dominating the Gulf Coast shipping market. Successful expansion isn't just about having capital and equipment, Harper said, cutting into her steak with surgical precision. It's about having the right leadership team, people who understand the market, who have established relationships, and who share our vision for what this industry could become with proper management. Proper management, not family management or traditional management, but actual competence-based leadership, which is why she continued, "We want you to head up our new Houston operations. Full authority over logistics coordination, client relations, staff hiring, the works. This isn't an employee position, Noah. We want a partner. A partner." The word hit me like a fresh breeze off the Gulf. After 18 years of being treated like a well-paid technician who should be grateful for whatever assignments came his way, someone was offering me actual authority. The compensation package made my current salary look like pocket change: VP National Operations, equity stake, performance bonuses tied to expansion success. We were talking about the kind of money that comes with real responsibility and real rewards. "I'm interested," I told her, which was corporate speak for holy crap. You're offering me everything I've wanted for the past decade. But I hope you understand that I'd need to think about something like this very carefully. Of course, Harper replied. I wouldn't expect anything less from someone with your professional standards. But Noah, her voice took on a slightly sharper edge. Don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't stay open forever. She was right. The maritime logistics world was basically a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. If Harper had noticed my situation at Richardson Maritime, others probably had too. And if word got around that I was having conversations with competitors, Owen would lose his mind in the most spectacular way possible. That night at dinner, Grace asked me about my meeting with Owen. We were sitting at our kitchen table, the one we'd bought when we first moved into the house 12 years ago, sharing takeout Chinese and going through the motions of married conversation. How did it go? She asked, not looking up from her low mind. Interesting, I replied, which was technically true. Owen's making some significant changes to operations. Grace finally looked up, and for a moment I saw something like concern in her eyes. What kind of changes? Budget restructuring. He's cutting operations funding by 65% to invest in automated systems. I expected shock, outrage, maybe even some choice words about her brother's management style. What I got was Grace taking a sip of wine and shrugging like I'd just told her the mailman was running late. Owen knows what he's doing, she said, going back to her food. He's been running that company for 8 years. If he thinks automation is necessary, then that's probably the right direction. Not wow, that seems drastic, or how does this affect your job, or even are you okay with this? Just casual acceptance wrapped up in blind family loyalty. Grace, I said, trying to keep my voice level, we're talking about eliminating most of the operations department? That's not exactly fine-tuning the budget. She gave me that patronizing smile she'd perfected at corporate networking events. Noah, you're being dramatic. Owen wouldn't do anything that wasn't in the best interest of the company. And what's good for the company is good for our family. What's good for the company is good for our family. She sounded like a press release with better hair. I went upstairs to change out of my work clothes, and that's when I made the mistake of checking my email. There was a message from Richardson Maritime's internal newsletter, the monthly update that Owen used to showcase company achievements and strategic initiatives. The headline read, Richardson Maritime embraces digital transformation. CEO Owen Richardson leads industry innovation. The article was a masterpiece of corporate self-promotion. Owen had somehow turned his decision to gut operations into a visionary strategy that would position Richardson Maritime as a leader in next-generation logistics management. There were quotes from industry analysts praising the company's forward-thinking approach and commitment to technological advancement. My name appeared exactly once in a paragraph about transitional operational adjustments during the implementation phase. 18 years of building the relationships and systems that actually kept the company profitable, reduced to a footnote about transitional adjustments. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at that newsletter until the words started blurring together. The worst part wasn't even the credit stealing, though that stung plenty. The worst part was the casual assumption that I'd just sit there and take whatever Owen decided to dish out, that I was so dependent on his family's generosity that I'd accept any indignity rather than risk losing my position. While Owen Richardson was about to learn something about assumptions, I called Harper the next morning and accepted her offer. Simple as that. No dramatic speech, no burning bridges ceremony, just a professional conversation between two people who understood the value of operational expertise over family politics. I'll need 2 weeks to transition my current responsibilities, I told her, which was corporate speak for I need time to document everything Owen's going to screw up once I'm gone. Take whatever time you need, Harper replied. We want this done right. Novel concept. Over the next 10 days, I became the model of professional courtesy. I documented every client relationship, every supplier contact, every operational protocol that kept Richardson Maritime running smoothly. I created transition guides that a reasonably intelligent intern could follow. I scheduled meetings with key accounts to introduce them to my replacement, whoever that was going to be. What I didn't mention in those meetings was that my replacement was going to be Owen himself, at least until he figured out that running operations required more than strategic vision and consultant reports. The fun part was watching Owen's reaction to my sudden compliance. For years, I'd been the guy who asked uncomfortable questions about implementation timelines and resource allocation. Now I was nodding along with his digital transformation initiatives and praising his innovative thinking. You see, Noah, he said during one particularly painful strategy meeting, This is what happens when everyone gets on the same page. Maybe this budget restructuring was exactly what you needed to reach your full potential. My full potential, right? If Owen only knew that my full potential involved systematically dismantling his client base while he congratulated himself on being a visionary leader. The Maritime Industry Summit in New Orleans was the perfect venue for my announcement. 3 days of seminars, networking events, and keynote presentations where every major player in Gulf Coast shipping would be gathered in one place. Owen had been looking forward to this conference for months, partly because he loved playing industry thought leader, and partly because Richardson Maritime was a platinum sponsor. I sat in the audience during Owen's presentation on embracing digital disruption in maritime logistics, watching him pontificate about automated systems and predictive analytics to a room full of people who actually moved cargo for a living. The irony was thick enough to cut with a cargo hook. The future belongs to companies that can adapt, Owen declared, clicking through slides that looked like they'd been designed by a consulting firm that charged by the buzzword. While others cling to outdated operational models, Richardson Maritime is pioneering the next generation of logistics management, outdated operational models. That would be the systems I'd built that actually kept his company profitable while he played with computer simulations. The applause was polite, the kind of response that conference organizers hope for and speakers mistake for genuine enthusiasm. Owen soaked it up like a sponge, probably already planning how he'd describe this triumph to Grace over dinner. Then the conference moderator stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you, Mr. Richardson, for those insights about technological innovation. And now we're pleased to welcome Harper Davis, CEO of Continental Logistics, who'll be sharing some exciting news about expansion and partnership opportunities in our industry." I watched Owen's expression change as Harper walked onto the stage. The confident smile faltered just slightly, not enough for most people to notice, but I'd been studying his reactions for 18 years. He knew Continental Logistics was his biggest competition, but he'd assumed they'd stay safely contained in their existing markets. Harper looked incredible up there, all confidence and professional authority in a Navy business suit that probably cost more than Owen's, but somehow managed to look effortless instead of showy. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice carrying easily through the conference center. "I want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately, the difference between embracing change and actually leading it. Embracing change versus leading it." She was basically taking everything Owen had just said about digital transformation and turning it into an argument for why execution mattered more than vision. At Continental Logistics, we believe that industry leadership comes from combining innovative thinking with operational excellence, Harper continued, which is why I'm excited to announce our expansion into Gulf Coast operations, bringing proven expertise and fresh perspectives to a market that's ready for real transformation. This was it, my cue. I felt my heart rate spike as Harper's eyes found mine in the audience. "Successful expansion requires the right leadership team," she said, "people who understand both the technical challenges and the human relationships that drive this industry. Which is why I'm thrilled to introduce you to our new VP of National Operations." The room went dead silent as she gestured toward me. "Please join me in welcoming Noah Richardson to the Continental Logistics team." I stood up, and I swear you could have heard a container pin drop in that conference center. 500 industry professionals, including every major player in Gulf Coast shipping, watching as I walked down the aisle like I was heading to my own wedding. The walk to the stage felt like it took forever and no time at all. I could see faces in the audience, surprise, confusion, some knowing smiles from people who'd apparently seen this coming. And Owen looked like someone had just told him his house was on fire and his insurance had expired yesterday. I shook Harper's hand on stage, the cameras flashing like we were signing a peace treaty, instead of launching what amounted to a business war. The handshake lasted just long enough for me to catch Owen's eye in the audience. Just long enough to mouth 2 words that I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Perfect timing. His face went through about 6 different shades of red before settling on a color that I can only describe as stroke victim purple. 3 months later, I was standing in the main logistics center of Continental's brand new Houston facility, watching a team that included 8 former Richardson Maritime employees coordinate container movements with the kind of efficiency that actually impressed port authorities. Harper found me by the dispatch center, holding a contract that made my original offer look like an entry-level position. Senior VP of Gulf Coast Operations with an equity stake that would make me a legitimate millionaire. "The numbers speak for themselves," she said, and they did. We'd captured 75% of Richardson Maritime's major accounts within 4 months. Owen's company was facing bankruptcy while Continental was already expanding into other Texas ports. Standing in that facility, watching maritime logistics done right, I couldn't help but think about Owen's words. Perfect timing indeed. He'd been right about that, just not in the way he'd intended. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's proving that their biggest mistake was underestimating what you could accomplish without them holding you back. When someone cuts your wings thinking they're grounding you, they might just discover you were never meant to fly in their small cage anyway. You were meant to soar in open skies. They never had the vision to see.